Let's do that again. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this Tuesday afternoon for our weekly team call. We have a guest speaker today, as you can see, joining Ryan and I. We're going to jump right into that because I want to respect our speaker's time. I want you to make sure you stick around at the end. We've got some important things we're going to discuss, including the end of the 10% discount for Beachbody On Demand customers. And I want to give you some tips and tricks on sort of how to react to that, how to respond to any issues, and just sort of how to handle it in general. But we'll get to that at the end. As we kick off today, I really just have a few words of gratitude. And they are for our speaker, John David Mann, who's a world-renowned author and has agreed to join us from what is, I believe, still a very wet Jacksonville, Florida area. So thank you so much for making the time today. You know, Ryan and I were fully prepared to call an audible, but really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and I'm sure your life really to join us. And the other one is just for Ryan, who is really responsible for today's interview. A few years ago, Ryan made sort of acquaintances and networked with Bob Burg, who's the co-author of one of my favorite books, The Go-Giver, and had Bob on his call a couple years ago. And now he's brought John David Mann to us to talk about his latest book and some of the challenges, frankly, of being an entrepreneur. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Ryan, kind of get out of the way and sit here and take a lot of notes.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, I read The Go-Giver a couple of years ago, back in 2014 or 15, and I think it was 2015, and I listened to the audio, which, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's you and Bob that actually do the audio of that book.
That's right.
And it was, to me, it was, I think I listened to it in 2 sittings because, you know, it's like one of those things where you put the book on and it's like, okay, I'm going to listen to this personal development book. I'm kind of supposed to do personal development. A lot of it turns out good, but some of it's kind of not so good, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, they said the same things over and over again. And then you get those ones where you put it in your ear and you're like, no, quiet, kids, quiet. I'm listening to my book, you know, and that was what The Go-Giver was like for me. And so then when I was able to have Bob on the call, I think I had just emailed Bob or said Bob actually commented on Facebook on one of my posts about The Go-Giver. And I think he may have been just searching for The Go-Giver posts on Facebook or something like that and was connecting with his audience. And then he ended up on our team call. And then I talked to John at the time too, and we had a little bit of a scheduling faux pas at that time and didn't make it onto the call. But now John reached out to me about this book. And so what I want to do now is just give you a quick, well, it's not really that quick, but a background on John before I turn it over to him and just ask questions. So John has been a concert cellist, an award-winning composer, high school founder, an educator. You can see how a lot of these things are like, wow, like very diverse, right? He's been a publisher now, an entrepreneur, a marketer, a public speaker, and even a master of ceremonies. But what he really loves to do is stay home, take quiet walks with his wife, and sit in his favorite armchair writing books. So it sounds like being an author is really one of his favorite things. John's co-authored 24 books, including the New York Times and national bestsellers. His books have been published in 30 languages, sold over 2 million copies. He's best known for The Go-Giver, which he co-wrote with Bob Burg. And his latest is coming this fall, which I've had the chance to preview, and I'm loving as much as The Go-Giver and am enthralled with. I'm about halfway through it right now. He co-wrote this with Chef Charles Carroll, and it's called The Recipe, the Story of Loss, Love, and the Ingredients of Greatness. John doesn't usually publish books. He writes them. Someone else publishes them and markets them, but when more than 40 publishers passed on The Recipe book, he was faced with 2 choices: either shelve it or take it on himself. So that's what he's done, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But something I didn't know about John, even when I had read The Go-Giver, is that he was a seminal figure in the network marketing and direct selling world in the 90s and early 2000s, and we'll get into that a little bit too. He co-founded the legendary Upline Journal, served as editor-in-chief of Network Marketing Lifestyles and Network Marketing Times, produced John Milton Fogg's Greatest Networker in the World, and co-wrote or ghost-wrote many of the key books for such figures as Paul Zane Pilsner, Robert Kiyosaki, and Jeff Olson. Some of you might have heard of The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. That is a huge book in our industry. So many people credit, I think Josh Spencer, one of our top coaches, credits a lot of his early success to The Slight Edge. So he was involved in that. And so just wow, there's a lot of background here, a lot of awesomeness. So we're really excited to have you on the call. And with all of that, welcome to the call, John.
Well, thank you, Ryan. That's great. I tell you, a couple hours ago, we didn't have power, and I didn't think, we thought we were going to have to postpone this thing, because I'm sitting here in the middle of Florida. We just went through Hurricane Irma, and it's great to not only have lights, air conditioning, but internet, and here we are. How cool is this?
Yes, it's awesome. I love it. Thank you for being willing to do that. I grew up in Florida till I was 16. I went through Hurricane Andrew when I was 12, so I know all about it. I've been watching very closely, so appreciate you making the effort to get here anyway. But let's just go ahead and jump into some questions. And now I know that one of the questions I had when I started reading about your network marketing experience, and I know someone is going to ask it on the chat if we don't get to it. So I'll just go ahead and ask it. Can you give us more background on those late 90s, early 2000s in network marketing? What company were you with, and what did you build, and all that kind of stuff? People are going to want to know those kind of things.
Yeah, sure. This is great. I love being on a call with your people, because it's unusual for me. Most of the calls are just kind of the mainstream world that doesn't know anything about direct selling, so they don't ask me that question. Yeah. It was kind of cool. Yeah, so I got involved in the network marketing direct selling world back in the early 80s. I dabbled multi-pure years back, and a company called Wachters. I don't know if anybody even remembers that. It was like one of the oldest, sort of the Amway generation, before Amway even. They sold seaweed-based supplements, a venerable old company out of Washington State. But the company that I really connected with was a company called Celtec. They sold blue-green algae out of a lake in Oregon.
Oh, wow.
I know some of you guys will remember this. We grew very big. We kind of chugged along for a decade, and then in the middle 90s, we grew really large. And at one point, I think we were like about a third of a million strong, and I had over 100,000 people in my downline. And it was exciting times for us. And then that company had a life cycle. It peaked in the late 90s, and then diminished and kind of made room for other companies. Still around today under another name. They're called New Earth now. Great company. Little company, still love the product, still love the people. Not actively involved myself, but I was very involved in the 90s when Fogg and I hooked up and started Upline Magazine and wrote The Greatest Networker, and then later Lifestyles and all that. I was, it was my world. It's what I did. So I've been reinventing myself sort of every decade since I was born, I think, and I reinvented myself as an author in the last decade. So the network marketing is it's kind of like my high school or my alma mater. I feel this tremendous fondness for the direct selling world. It's where I grew up. It's where I learned how to do public speaking. It's where I learned about leadership. It's where I learned about personal development. It's where I learned about entrepreneurialism, which I did not learn about, growing up as a classical musician in a family of musicians. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, you can keep that in mind as you go through, answering the rest of the questions and talking about your book, how it relates to us as network marketers, and I think, you probably know a little bit about Beachbody, but, we're a fitness company, right? Fitness, but we also are into nutritionals. So yeah. You have some background in that. So keep that in mind as we go through these other questions. But I want to talk more about your writing career and specifically about the recipe as we go through some more questions. So the next question is, it seems like you do a lot of co-writing of books, right? So
yes.
There always seems to be, maybe not always, I don't know all your books, but there always seems to be a co-writer. So you've written books for men and women, Rita Davenport, John Addison, Old and Young. You had a 19-year-old business prodigy. You've worked with a Navy SEAL sniper. What strikes me is you've got to really be able to write a book with somebody. You must spend a lot of time with them and, really get into their heads and figure out, how to write with their story in mind, but you're writing. Tell me,
Yeah.
like down that line.
Yeah, it's funny at Upline Magazine, we used to have two kinds of people. John Fogg used to say we have two kinds of people approach us. We had leaders who approach us and say, I've got a big organization. I'm really important in my company. You guys should write a story on me. And then we'd have people who would approach us and say, I got this 23-year-old kid in my organization. He's amazing. You should write a story about him. And you can guess which story we preferred to write. One thing I really learned in the direct selling world is that it sounds like a cliche, but it's about teamwork. It's about partnering with people. That there are things that you can do in synergy with others that you could never dream of doing on your own. And I've made a business model out of that. You're absolutely right. All of my books, with one exception, I've co-authored with somebody else. The only exception is this book, The Zen of MLM. It's a collection of my editorials and essays, which I self-published years ago as my love letter to the direct selling world. And it's just, that's the only book I've written that I didn't write with somebody else. But every other book has been a teaming. And as you say, it's been pretty diverse. I mean, Rita Davenport and John Addison, very different people. I wrote a book with a guy who was Walter Mondale's campaign director, who was a secret alcoholic and drug addict by night. I wrote his memoir. Navy SEAL sniper. Of course, Bob Berg, business leader. Chef Charles, this world-renowned chef. We're going to talk about that. It's about empathy. It's just about, we all have these incredibly different experiences and experience sets, but the humanity in us is so universal. It's like the old expression, if you don't have a certain skill, then recruit that skill in the organization. If you don't have a certain ability, you can try and develop that ability, but just recruit that ability because somebody else already has it.
Yeah.
Why invent that when it's already there? Just team with that. I have a business model as a writer, and it works like this. I team up with somebody. It's like those star systems that are two stars, two suns that revolve around each other. I team up with somebody who has a story to tell, fascinating life, or fascinating principles to teach, or something of great value that the world will value, and they have a marketing platform. Yeah, my business model is I write it, you market it. Bob Berg approached me about The Go-Giver, about this idea for a story over a decade ago. He says, listen, I have this idea for a story. I know it's going to be great, but I can't write it. It's not the kind of writing I do. If you write it with me, I'll make you a deal. You write the book, I'll promote it. Mm-hmm. I liked that idea. Despite all my years in direct selling, I didn't consider myself a natural or comfortable a promoter. I'm very much of an introvert, although a lot of great leaders in direct selling actually are closet introverts. But promotion and marketing wasn't where I wanted to focus. I really wanted to partner with someone who did that. Bob is amazing. As you said, he was on Facebook, and that's how you connected. Dude is always on Facebook. The man is a monster on Twitter, Facebook, and it's like he amazes me. It amazes me how he isn't just there. He connects with people. He creates these relationships that are real, that are authentic, that are tangible, that are palpable. The man just lives it through the internet, through the wires. It's fantastic. So that's always been my business model. And the way that works, to get back to your question, is, I have no military background. My dad fought in World War II, but it wasn't his plan. I mean, he grew up in Nazi Germany, and he experienced that world, and he escaped from that world. He got to America, naturalized, got drafted, shipped back to Germany as a counterintelligence agent. So he's like, oh damn, I thought I just left here. So I don't consider myself from a military family exactly, but here I am writing this book with this Navy SEAL sniper. And my agent sent me this book proposal and said, this is this guy who needs a writer. You don't want to do this, do you? And I was like, oh, I got to do this. There's no way I'm not doing this. And Brandon Webb, my sniper friend, he and I have just published our 5th book together, Total Focus. It's about applying Spec Ops principles to the business world. It would be a good direct seller book, actually, Total Focus. And people have asked me, how do you do that? How do you write a book with a sniper, like with a SEAL? And the answer is, Brandon and I just clicked because we have the same values. We both have this value for excellence. We have this value for teamwork. We have this value for no BS, and for finding genuine value and then promoting that. So, it's the same thing with Charles, the chef. When he reached out to me in 2009 and said, "Hey, I love the Go-Giver. I'm using it with my team. I'd like to connect with you." We had 2 conversations and we were like me and Bob Berg, just the same values, same experience. This stuff is the real stuff that matters, is all universal.
So when you work with people, when you find people who click with you like that, it's not hard, is it? Like, you find the people that have the same values as you, that have the same work ethic as you, have the same, that I totally get what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and you mentioned that. You just mentioned, I didn't say it, but you got a good one. The work ethic. That to me is really important. I have a demonic work ethic, and I think you have to really. That has to be there. It certainly is true of a SEAL. Obviously, you don't even pass buds. You don't even get to be a SEAL if you aren't some kind of monster animal already. Yeah. I can pretty sure promise you that I would not make it through buds. I do not think that I would make a good SEAL. I just don't think it's in my constitution. Yeah. But man, I got the same ferocity about getting that paragraph right. So yeah, work ethic, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's switch to the recipe a little bit. Like I said, I'm about halfway through, so I kind of know the basic idea of the book. I'll probably read some more of it right after this call. But why don't you give us a little bit of a synopsis for the people who, obviously haven't read it yet, since it's not even quite released. What's the book about? Yeah,
so I mean, in a sense, it's the same book I always write. It's a book about somebody who's struggling to overcome their situation, and who's looking for purpose and value in their lives. And that purpose and value may have a tangible manifestation, like Joe in the Go-Giver wants to make his his finances work, his career work. But in this case, the recipe, it's the story of a 14-year-old young boy, his name is Owen, who has just lost his dad. Person he loved most in the world has died maybe half a year or a few months before the book opens. And so he's really having a hard time. His grades are spiraling down. He's getting in fights at school. He's on the verge of expulsion, angry at the world, angry at God, angry at life, just not having an easy time. And he's just committed an act of vandalism, which has landed him in this situation that he doesn't like, where he's got to go talk to the owner of this diner, and make reparation for the vandalism. So he ends up going to work for the cook in this diner, and a lot of the book takes place in the kitchen, over knives and vegetables and stoves and seasonings. And it's kind of like Karate Kid meets Master Chef. Learns a lot about cooking, but in the process, it's kind of like stealth life learning. The lessons of the kitchen really turn out to be lessons about life, and isn't that like always the way it is, whether you're learning about motorcycle mechanics or the ins and outs of how to operate a conference call or promote a product or groom dogs, whatever it is. If you really put your heart and soul into it, you discover life lurking in there. So the point of the book is the life lessons that he learns. And in the course of the book, there are, of course, some surprises. Some people turn out to be more than they seem, and some of the lessons have twists to them, and that's the recipe.
Huh. Yeah, I love the Karate Kid meets Master Chef approach, because that really does describe the book well. When you probably just connected with me because the Karate Kid is like, based on my age, is like a very classic book for me. Movie for me. So thinking about it in that way, I was just sitting here going, that's exactly what it's like. It's totally like the chef is Mr. Miyagi, and totally. So that's a great way to put it. I love it. The life lessons that hide within you know, how you cook a meal
Yeah.
is really what the book is about.
How you chop an onion. Yeah.
Yeah.
How you sear a piece of salmon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I found, you know, with my team in network marketing, that some of the best ways to get concepts across are through relating it to something else, you know, an analogy. We have an analogy on my team that we just refer to as the train. We're on the train. We're inviting people onto the train with us. Whether they get on or not is not, you know, like the biggest thing in the world. Yeah, it's just like we're inviting people onto the train. We got extra seats. Who wants to go with us?
Yes.
And when you put things in those kind of contexts, a lot of times it's like, oh, I get it now, you know, and I think that's really what the book does well, is it takes something like cooking, applies it to a life lesson, and you go, oh, I get that now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Well, let's tackle the hard question. So
sure. Did I kill the person? No, I did not. Go ahead. What's the hard question?
The hard question is, why did more than 40 publishers turn the book down? And why did you decide to forge ahead and publish it yourself?
I did not shoot the sheriff, but I did shoot the deputy. Yeah, why did 40 publishers turn us down? So this is weird, because I will say this is not what I expected. Here's what I thought. And this just goes to show that no matter how much success you've had, life always has surprises.
Yeah.
Just when you think that you've finished with failure, you discover that failure perhaps is not finished with you. Depending upon how you define failure, you may use a different term.
Yeah.
So here I am, published two dozen books, New York Times bestsellers, national bestsellers, 30 languages, blah, blah, 2 million copies. And you'd think, as I did, that it would be a cakewalk once the book was finished, the manuscript was done, to walk it into New York City and get it published. I gave my agent the manuscript, and she read it, and she said, oh my God, this is the best writing you've ever done. This is going to be amazing. And she was very excited. She said, we're going to take it to New York. There's going to be an auction. It's going to go to auction, which means that the publishers vie for it. And you're going to get a 7-figure advance, and this is going to be amazing. Well, I didn't get a 7-figure advance. I didn't get a 1-figure advance. The first publisher said, love this book. I love this story. The characters are so real. That boy Owen is so poignant. The chef is so masterful in his approach to mentoring. The life lessons are so poignant. The food, the recipes, the descriptions of cooking are like mouth-watering and tantalizing and so vivid that I feel like I'm there in the kitchen. We'll pass. And then the next publisher said the same thing. And then the third, and then the fourth, and then the fifth. And 40 publishers basically said, this one's not for us. We're sorry. And that made us think. When we took The Go-Giver to New York a decade ago, 22 publishers turned it down. And the 23rd said, I want this. And, we're 500,000 copies later, that publisher is happy he said what he said, and all the other publishers are going, oh! So we kept thinking that was going to happen. But the same thing happened here without the 23rd publisher, without the one who said yes. This is like Colonel Sanders, right? And the Kentucky Fried Chicken story, or the Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen story with Chicken Soup for the Soul, or all the other stories, of the guy who got, 40 no's, and then the 41st guy turned out to be the biggest heavy hitter in his organization. All the stories that we've all heard about persistence in the face of repeated no's. Except that there was no yes at the end. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories of, this is over a decade ago. This is like 15 years ago. I took a trip from the East Coast where I live out to California to a friend's place where we got in the car and drove 2 hours out into the country in middle state of California to a recruiting event. We were in a guy's living room, which was supposed to have 24 serious people there. One guest showed up. And then the way the story ends is, but that one guest didn't sign up either. So that's kind of how this one went. That story is true, by the way. It was a great trip, but it netted nothing. That's how this story went, which meant that we were faced with a question. So are these 40 publishers right? to turn this down, or are we the 41st? Do we make ourselves the 41st? Do we say there really is something out there? And we did some soul searching, because even though I mentioned my book, The Zen of MLM, which I self-published, but I never sold more than a few thousand copies. I never intended to. This is a love letter to the business. It wasn't meant as a commercial enterprise to be a success. Beyond this, I've never self-published, with the intention of the book actually going somewhere.
Right.
And it's a big challenge to do. But Chef Charles and I talked about it, and we believe that there is a readership out there who wants this book. We believe that there are people out there who, A, love personal development and personal growth and leadership, right? Love that whole world. And B, love food, right? The meeting of personal growth and food. I mean, it's like, does that describe us right here? Of course it. So the only question is, can we reach those people? Can we, without being super skilled marketers, super experienced promoters, experienced self-publishers, and we both have day jobs. I got books I'm writing. I've got 2 more parables I'm writing right now. And Chef Charles runs a crew of 750 people, one of the busiest country clubs in the nation, and he runs it all. So it isn't like we have spare time, but we decided, you know what? This is a good challenge. We believe in it. So that's what we're doing. That's our story, and we're going to stick to it.
I like it. It kind of rolls into the next question, which is, how does this book apply to us as network marketers? Just talk a little bit about that. We're a group that's trying to get better. I think we've answered part of this question already. We've touched on it, but just kind of maybe try to pull that together as a group of network marketers who's into personal development, into leadership, all the things, what goes into network marketing. How does this book apply to us?
Yeah. It's interesting when you read the book, and for anybody out listening to who ends up picking up the book and reading it, I want to encourage you to have 2 things before you read it, or as you're reading it, 2 things in mind. One, which might not be obvious at first. One is that, the book is about Owen, the boy, and that's the focus of the book. But seen from behind, or from the other perspective, it's also really a book about the old chef, which is to say, it's also kind of a handbook of mentoring. Because if you watch the way the chef treats the kid, and as you get into the later part of the book, you'll find out that there's more to the chef's history than meets the eye in relation to this kid. But when you look at how he treats him, there's one a passage where the boy has, I don't want to give away too much, but just simply, there's one passage where the boy has basically paid back his debt, and he is essentially released. The chef says, in essence, you're free to go, and desperately doesn't want him to go, doesn't want him to leave, because there's what they have to do together is still so unfinished. But he basically says, you're free to go, and the boy gets up and he goes. And the chef could so easily just even say a few words to plant, something that might make him want to stay, and he doesn't do it. I mean, the restraint he has as a mentor fills me with admiration, to be honest. I want to be the chef when I grow up. So there's a way in which he is very hands-off as a mentor, and the way he mentors by understatement. He mentors by not saying, a little bit like Miyagi. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there are a few points in the book, and you haven't probably gotten to this point yet, Ryan, where he says some stuff that's pretty hard, and that the boy doesn't expect, and that I didn't expect either. There are times when he tells a hard truth. Yeah. So, it's a book about mentoring in that sense. And the other thing I want to say is that the first half of the book, the boy is kind of learning principles that are really about me, about himself. They're about how to refine myself as a person, grow myself as a person. The second half of the book, the principles that the chef teaches start to kind of move into the social sphere. They deal more with the team, the group, how you relate to the world around you. And so they're both, there's sort of there's a self side, and there's an other side to that set of 7 principles that I think are, could be kind of a cool could be kind of a cool set of principles in relation to building a group. Because building a group, it's all about building yourself, right? It's really all about building yourself. It's not so much what you do that brings people to your organization, it's who you are. It's not so much what you say, it's the you saying those things. When they say you can't say the right things to the right people or the wrong things to the wrong people, it's because it's about who you are, the messenger. And people read the you through the words, even though words are important and the right message is important and messaging is important. I believe in all of that. So there's a lot that's about developing the self, but at the same time, there is leadership, and leadership is all about how you build a team. And like I was saying about John and Upline, and how we relate to leaders who build themselves versus leaders who build other leaders. And I think that's a lesson that's very strongly there in the book too.
I like that. Thinking about just the parts that I've read about, looking at it from the point of view of being the boy, or looking at it from the point of view of being the chef. I think definitely both apply to what we do in network marketing. Maybe the chef more for the one who's the guy who's got a team started and is trying to take it to the next level, and and learn how to mentor people. That's totally true, because that's a hard step, right? When you go from that, like, okay, I'm getting customers, I'm signing up coaches, to, we call them coaches, distributors, but you're signing up people in your downline, and then you move to I'm supposed to be mentoring these people in my downline to help them do what I can do this, but how do I help other people do what I'm doing? And that's there's definitely some lessons in the book for that. I like that.
Building people. Yeah. There's this moment in the story where this character Mad Dog, the breakfast cook, where Ruth the server tells Owen about how when Mad Dog was first hired, and the way he was first hired was that he walked in through the front of the restaurant to going toward the kitchen, toward the back, to go interview with the chef for the job opening. And as he's walking through the front, he passed by a table that had been cleared, but there was one dirty coffee cup there. And so he picked the coffee cup up and he got rid of it quickly, and he put a new one there, and then he went on to the back. And by the time he reached the door to the back of the diner, the chef had already hired him in his mind, because he'd seen him through the pass-through. He'd seen what he did. And, that's I was intrigued not only by the Mad Dog in that scene, but by the chef in that scene. He knew how to watch for what he was looking for in a team.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. Yeah. You thinking about it you tend to think about that from the point of view of the guy who took the coffee cup. You're like, yeah, I need to be like that.
Yes.
Right? I need to be like that guy. I need to be the one who picks up the coffee cup, which is kind of part of the next question. But then the other side of that is being able to look for the qualities in other people that you want. We talk about that in network marketing. We talk about, it applies to any business, or obviously to a diner, but you talk about how you don't just want people, you don't just want anybody. We talk about having an avatar, a customer avatar, that person that you're marketing to, that person that you really want, the one that clicks with you, the one who has the same, goes back to you writing books with people, the same work ethic, the same values, the same things, right? And the chef was able to see the fact that he picked that cup up means that he and we could write a book together, that kind of same thing. So
I've always said, I know you have a question there. In network marketing, I've always said that the person you're looking to recruit is the person who sees it, wants it, and does it. And it's like, for me, it's that simple, because not everybody's going to see it. No matter what you say, no matter how you explain, no matter what videos you show them, they're not going to see. And not everybody's going to want it, because a lot of people are just happy with where things are, or at least they're complacent with where things are. And not everybody's going to do it. It's like, you might see people who want it, but if they don't do it, and by do it, I mean they don't answer your phone call, they don't answer your email, they don't take a step, they don't meet you halfway. If they're not going to meet you halfway in your recruiting effort, then are you going to have to drag them through the business? Well, Mad Dog was somebody who saw it, wanted it, and did it. He was doing it even when he thought nobody was watching. And it's like what people do when they think no one is watching is that's the measure of a person.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the next question is totally right down this line, because in the book, the chef says one of his principles basically is pay attention to the little things, because when you do, the big things tend to take care of themselves. Yeah. And so I was going to ask you how you see that applying to your own work. And then for us, we kind of have, the story of Mad Dog and the coffee cup is kind of the thing, right? He took care of the little thing and he got hired for the job he was coming in for. Yes. That's an example of the little things taking care of the big things. But
and the beautiful thing is that the thing that the chef saw Mad Dog do had nothing to do with cooking breakfast, which is what he's being hired for.
Right.
You mentioned the Slight Edge earlier, and for people who know the Slight Edge, the book is really all about that. It's about the idea of that penny doubled, becomes more than $10 million in a 31-day month. The little things in the case of the chef and of food preparation, that's not hard to see, because you think about a great chef, you think about their almost fanatic attention to precision and details, right? In the cutting of the vegetables and the presentation of the dish and the little garnish and the whole deal, right? You watch Food Network, you see these people doing these things that look like they belong in a museum of art, right? So that is, fanatic attention to little things in terms of the artistic presentation, but it's also in terms of washing your hands, keeping the knife clean, keeping the knife sharp, buying only the highest quality produce, attention to details that others may never see. I say that for me, one of the laws that I use to run my life is the law of little things. And to me, the law of little things, I'll illustrate it this way. I've written 24 books. When I sit down to write a new book, I'm writing a book right now. It's a parable about financial health. And when I sit down to write a new book, I'm totally intimidated. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't see the book. I just can't picture it, the whole thing in my mind. What I've learned to do is two things. And to me, it was the same way picking up the phone or the keyboard to prospect somebody. I learned two things. One is to have faith that there's a book out there just waiting for me to write it, and that I will find it. It will find me, or I will find it. So it's going to happen. But the second thing is that I can't see the book because nobody can. Nobody can write a book. I mean, nobody can build an organization of 10,000 or 100,000 people. All I can do is what Hemingway used to say, is write one true sentence. I can get a sentence, right? So that's where I'll start. I'll sit down with a pad of blank paper and a pen, and I'll sit in that chair. Here you go, right over there in the corner. It's my chair. And I'll sit in that chair with headphones on, listening to Philip Glass or Bach or something. And I'll just wait with an empty head, as empty as I can get it, until a sentence comes along. And then I'll put it down. And it might not be the right sentence, or it might not be the totally right sentence, but it's my starting place. It's where I'm going to start. It's a little thing. And then I'll get another one. Nobody can write a book, but anybody can write a sentence. And guess what? A book is made out of sentences. So the law of little things is little things matter. In fact, they're the only thing that does. If you take care of the little things, the big things will tend to take care of themselves. You cannot recruit a 100,000 person organization. What you can do is have a conversation with an individual person. You can have that conversation and find out who they are. Get in their head, relate to them. You can, follow threads of connection and see where they go. However your process works, you can have that process with one person, and then you can do it again, and then you can do it again, and then you can do it again. And that's the Slight Edge, which is a penny doubled every day turns into $10 million plus. I go back to that. It sounds so simplistic, but I have to lead myself by the neck back to that every time I start a big project, because the intimidation and the kind of the awe at the immensity of this goal I've set for myself threatens to snuff me into inaction every time. Yeah. I have to remind myself, and I'll do this out loud, by the way. When I first started network marketing back in 1980, one of the first things I learned was to speak my thoughts out loud in my room. Fortunately, I'm in private, so I don't get arrested for being insane. Speak my thoughts out loud so I can actually hear what I'm thinking, because mostly what I'm thinking is pretty terrible. As I speak them out loud, I discover that I'm saying, Johnny, you have no idea what you're doing. And I say, wait, who just said that? So I'm still doing that quarter century later. Johnny, you have no idea what you're doing. Wait a second. I'll catch myself saying that, and I will say, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing. Or if I don't, I will soon enough. Right. So that to me is the law of little things, and that's just the same as the kid in Karate Kid had to learn: wax on, wax off.
Ryan, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah,
please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just highlight the importance of that and what you're talking about as far as the law of little things, and really having to drag yourself back to that. I have been a coach for 10 years now.
Yeah.
I have been a full-time coach for almost 8, and I have to do the exact same thing. Every month we start over, and I have to remember what's the foundation of this thing is making what we call Success Club. Every organization has their own thing, but for us it's called Success Club. And it's about finding some new customers every single month. And I have to just start with that and then understand exactly what you said, that the books are written on groups of sentences, and teams are built on series of conversations. That's how you do it. And if you set out to just try and build 100,000 plus person downline, that's an overwhelming task. And it's going to be pretty hard to get that done on a Tuesday. But what I do know I can do on a Tuesday is I can sit down and I can do the fundamentals that it's based on, having those conversations, dialing into some good personal development, and making sure that I'm taking care of myself and being a product of our product, and exercise and nutrition and doing all those things. And then that just compounds. And the compounded effect of that, or the slight edge effect of that, is exactly what you said. It's the law of the little things, but you have to continue to grab yourself by the neck and break yourself back to it, because that's the foundation of it. And I think, in all honesty, in my career, I've gotten away from it at times, and then I look and I go, oh, well, what's wrong? And then you go back and you go, oh, I know what the problem is. I'm not doing the little things.
And here's the challenge of it too, because you do that without any evidence that it's working. You have the phone conversation and then nothing happens. Or in the case of writing, what happens with a lot of people, this is what happens, I think, that kills most writing. I think a lot of people have great books or articles or, short stories or whatever, essays, blog posts in them, and it never happens. The number one thing that kills potential great writing, that smothers it in the cradle, is people write a sentence, maybe 2, maybe 3, and then they start fussing with it and saying, they start fixing it and changing it and making it better and saying, maybe I should start differently. Maybe we should choose. Oh, that sentence sounds terrible. I'm going to cross that out and start that way. They start editing as they go because they want to see it working. Well, I have an exciting piece of news for everybody, which is that I write successful books that do well. And when I start, it looks terrible. It looks awful. You put a few sentences down and you look at it and you go, I'm in the flow because I put garbage on the page. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to let utter dribble onto the page, just trusting that even though I can't see it right now, there's gold in that dirt somewhere. But you can't pan for the gold while you're writing. You can't do that. If you do, you'll kill it. And that's what most people do with writing. They kill it by looking for success in the first few sentences. You can't look for your star leader in your first 5 conversations, because the evidence is typically, you know what it's like? it's like taking care of your body. You eat well. You eat nourishing food. So you eat 3 or 4 meals composed of nourishing food. And do you suddenly go, oh my God, I've lost 20 pounds and I feel fantastic? No, that's the slight edge. It takes time. It takes a month. It takes 3 months. It takes a year for the results to start to show up. So there is, to some extent, the law of little things has to be accompanied by significant faith, by a significant leap of faith, which is why you have coaches and upline and mentors and people who can tell you, yeah, you're doing it right. It's fine. It's going to work. And I'm not just blowing smoke in your face. It's actually going to work. Just keep going. This is why we have parents, by the way.
It's funny because I was just reading, before I started reading your book, I was reading Ed Catmull's book, Creativity, Inc., The Story of Pixar. And you just reminded me, he talks a lot about this idea of, if you saw some of the initial cuts of some of the Pixar movies, you would absolutely you would be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe they actually put that. And if they would actually try to get each particular scene perfect by itself, they would never have a movie, right? They have to put it down. They do it with temporary voices even at first, so that they can actually watch the movie, so they can see what's going on. All these iterations, and so it's such a good principle to think about, how you can't just, for us, it's like, you can't say, my goal for this month is to make 20 Success Club points, our measurement of success, and then not focus on the little things that get you to Success Club. You can't say, my goal is to write a book this month, and then not write sentences.
Yes.
You have to focus on all those little things. I love this. This is such a great conversation for exactly what we do.
And to not be thrown by lack of evidence that it's working.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. All right. So last question I have for you. I don't know if Dave's going to have any other ones for you, but my last question is kind of a broad one. So take it where you will. But it's, how does success look for you as an author, and how would you apply that to us? What does that look like?
It's interesting. I've come to look at books as 2 different things, 2 different sort of parallel universes. Every book is, on the one hand, a book. It's a form of creative expression. It's a tube through which I push words in an effort to touch people and reach people and have an impact on their lives. So it's creative expression. Every book is also a business for me. This is what I do, and this is how I not only earn my financial living, but also am building my residual. And once, as everybody listening to my words right now knows, once you've experienced residual income, you'll never go back. It's the only way to do it, right? I've known this my whole life. So books, I'm not only building as an income stream for today, but for 20 years from today. So these books have to work. That's important to my business plan, to my life plan, that these books work financially. So I have 2 measures of success. I have a measure of success as a book, and I have a measure of success financially. As a book, I would say every one of my 24 books has been a success. Every one of them has readers who have contacted me, who have told me that they've changed their lives. They've touched them in significant ways. I feel proud of every one of them. I feel fond of every one of them. As businesses, the majority have been failures. And by failure, I mean financially, that to be a success financially, a book needs to repay its investment, whether it was an advance from a publisher or whatever the financial investment was, the 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever I put into it. It has to repay the investment, and then beyond that, generate a continuing income stream into the future. We call it royalties in books, right? It's residual, same deal. My 24 books I've only had a handful of successes, business successes. The Go-Giver, some of the Sniper books, a few others. I think how that is relevant to well, first of all, that's okay. Second of all, that's inevitable, at least, unless you're John Grisham or Stephen King or James Patterson, which None of us here are, I'm pretty sure. I know that I'm not. The way I think it relates to your business is that, let's say you get 24 people who are real leaders, who plug in and who get enthusiastic and who pour themselves onto it, start build organizations. I don't know the particulars of your organizational structure, how it builds and how it works. But let's say you've got 24 people who are building significant organizations. In the long run, 10 years from now, right? Assuming you're building for the long term, which is what I think is the only term that makes sense to build for. Mm-hmm. Will all 24 of those be here? I don't know. What if only a handful are? What if only a handful really go all the way, go the distance? Will that be good enough? If they go the distance and the distance is powerful and significant, oh yeah, that will make you wealthy. That will settle you for life. I have had so many heartaches and disappointments in network marketing, people that I poured my time into, who ended up never sticking with it and building organizationally. But here's the thing. Were they successes long-term as businesses? No. Were they successes as relationships, as human beings? It's a different measure. Those are all successes. Those all can be successes. They don't have to be a business success to be a human success, but you do need a handful to be business successes. If you're doing what you're doing right, taking care of the little things, serving with honor, doing things the way that human beings work best, you'll have the handful that work. And meanwhile, you'll have the 2 dozen, the 4 dozen, the 8 dozen relationships that make it all worthwhile. Hope that lawnmower isn't drowning me out.
No, I can't even hear it at all.
Oh, good.
We're good. Yeah, no, that's great. How is anybody even mowing the lawn right now? Isn't it soaked?
I don't know. It's bizarre. There's so much debris. My wife and I evacuated and went up to Tallahassee, northern part of the state, because we're in central Florida, outside Tampa.
Right.
And we evacuated to Tallahassee. We just drove back yesterday, and I've never seen so many downed trees and power lines in my life. I mean, it must have been over 100 trees, maybe more. Big oaks and stuff that we just saw smashed across the highway, pulling down poles and power lines. And, 60% of the state had or more had no power. So, we're fortunate we got our power back. That's why we're talking. And guys are outside mowing the lawn. What can I tell you? America, such a place.
That's crazy. Well, this has been really good. I love the look at success there, because I think that we all do tend to do exactly what you're talking about, which is, coach comes into our network, distributor comes into the network, and we're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to kill it.
That's
this
it.
guy's going to kill it.
I'm made for life.
You create a relationship with them, and you help them, and you work with them, and you pour your time into them.
And they could break your heart.
Maybe they even do really well at first, right? They're just like, they're killing it, and they're doing really well. And then all of a sudden, it's a shiny object, or it's a life problem, or it's a change of perspective, or whatever it is, and they're gone. And that goes in the failure category for a lot of us far too easily.
Yes.
We don't count the successes that were still there. And so it's good perspective.
Not only do I not regret any of those other books, but I couldn't have those few if I didn't have those many. It wouldn't work. I mean, what I learned in writing the books that never sold a lot, is what went into the writing the books that sold a lot. It comes with the territory. It's part of it.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, Dave, do you have any additional questions for him before I just want to talk a little bit about where people can get the book and all that kind of stuff? And
no, I really don't. I really don't. I had a few, but you really covered it. Talking about a lot of little things really covered other questions that I had. So I just thank you so much for attending. This has been phenomenal.
Awesome. I so appreciate it.
The feedback in the group I want to pass along, which is the same. There's not a lot of people on the webinar. We've got a lot of people watching in the group, and they really are enjoying the call.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we're going to post a bunch of links and stuff like that for you, John, in the groups, and let people know where they can get it. But those of you that are watching, the recipe comes out on October 17th. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
So October 17th. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon and all the other booksellers.
Yep.
If you want to see some of John's other books that we've been talking about a little bit in here, you can go to johndavidmann.com/books. So that's I think you can maybe see his name all is one word there, actually, which is perfect on the webinar if you can see him.
Oh, yeah.
But Mann is with 2 N's. John David mann.com/books. And then they're also running a pre-release special offer, which you can get at theingredientsofgreatness.com. So you'll see the pre-release special offer on theingredientsofgreatness.com, and I'll post those in our Facebook group so everybody can check those out too. So anything else you want to say about your pre-release or how people can get the books or anything like that?
Pre-release, the bonus, it was interesting. The bonus products that we created, bonus content we created for the pre-order people is, we're going to autograph a book for you and so forth, but also we created video content. I went down to Chef Charles's place to cook with him and talk with him. I interviewed him. There's a video of me interviewing him, and there's videos of him cooking and so forth. Chef Charles lives in Houston. Soon after I left, Hurricane Harvey came in.
No.
Right? So they went through that. And there's a scene in the book where the chef talks about helping people survive a disastrous flood. Little did we know when we wrote the book that Chef Charles would be in that scene himself as we were preparing the book. So the videos, there was a while there where we thought that they'd been destroyed by the flood, and we were pretty terrified about that. But the videos were safe. They're not finished yet. The production got delayed because of the flood, but it's all safe. It's all there. So you're going to see videos that we shot at Chef Charles's home that survived Hurricane Harvey.
Awesome. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else from you, I'm good. This was so helpful and good, and I'm so glad that we had you on and that you were able to make it. And glad you're
long and prosper.
I think we'll be talking about this one for a while. Maybe this next week's call.
Fantastic. Audio visual aid. The recipe. Blueberry pancakes in the cover.
Beautiful.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate this.
Oh, whoop. Ryan, are you still there? Uh-oh. Where'd you go? Did I just... Whoa. I think I lost Ryan. I'm going to just talk a little bit, I guess. I didn't know we were going to lose Ryan there. Let me see if he jumps back on. Hold on. Let me tell him to jump back on really quickly. He thought the call was just over. So a couple things just in wrapping up a little bit until Ryan gets back. In wrapping up a little bit here, I want to just recap a couple of things that I heard that I think were really important. One of the key things is when we're recruiting, right? I'm definitely looking for people with different skills than mine, right? I don't want everybody to be a carbon copy of me. There aren't very many, okay? I'm into some, there's not many people who are surfing, skiing, cyclists, men, it's not what I'm looking for. Okay, what I'm looking for is people with shared values. And if you've watched my training and done my stuff, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to measure when I'm recruiting. I'm asking myself, do I want to have this person around my kids? That's really the key factor for me when I'm recruiting somebody. And if I get an ick factor from somebody, or their Facebook has a bunch of things on it that I don't agree with from a value standpoint. Hey Ryan, welcome back.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite done. Then that's somebody that I'm just not going to really spend a lot of time recruiting. It doesn't mean that if that person came to me and said, hey, I really want to be a coach and I want to sign up with you, that I'm going to say, no, you need to go away, unless it's really bad, but I'm looking for people with shared values. Different skills is fine. Different interests is fine. Ryan and I really connected because at the time I was really into triathlon, and obviously Ryan is, but we also have different skills. We have the same values. And Ryan is definitely the type of person that I want around my kids. Because what I know is that at some point, if you're successful in our organization, you're going to come here to Coronado and you're probably going to meet my kids. And that's another discussion that we're going to have in the future about a retreat we're putting together in the spring. I wanted to touch on two things really quickly, and then we'll scoot up on out of here. And the reason I wanted to bring Ryan back was because we need to talk about those two things. The first thing is, I think we're going to do it on the 26th. This call will be a business opportunity presentation. We'll talk a little bit more next week about how to present that, how to make that, get people on to that call, and then also leverage the recording, okay? But that's what we're gonna do on Tuesday, September 26th. This call will be a business opportunity presentation, okay? So I wanna just kind of put that in the back of your mind, be there on the 26th, and talk to people about this. If you have a team of people, let them know, hey, on the 26th, there's gonna be a business opportunity presentation, and then on the 19th, next week, Ryan and I are gonna talk about how to leverage that, how to get people onto that presentation and get people kind of engaged with that. You have anything to add on that topic, Ryan?
No, I think we'll talk about that mostly next week, about how to do that. But I'm excited about it because I just think, you know, if you can get people on it, it's so powerful because, you know, third-party tools are great. It's actually an example of a third-party tool, but pre-recorded third-party tools done by other people are not nearly as powerful as live third-party tools or live personal tools that show people who people really are. You know, who are they getting in business with, right? You know, you see this, my team actually created at 2014 Summit, we created a little version of the Team Beachbody, introducing Team Beachbody video that a lot of other teams use because it's a little less corporate-y version of the introducing Team Beachbody. It has a lot of my team in it and stuff like that. And it's actually my voice over the top of it instead of the HGTV lady's voice, you know, and stuff like that. And people seem to really like it. But even that is still a pre-recorded, you know, set thing. And when you get people on a live call and you get to tell a more in-depth story and you get to see who you're going to be getting in business with, and maybe we even, you know, something to think about, Dave, is maybe bringing on a new coach who is having some success, or a coach who's had a lot of success, or somebody besides you and me who have been in it for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you know, having a third voice to show some, you know.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely on the slate. So we'll talk more about that next week. I also wanted to just touch on the 10% discount for Beachbody On Demand subscribers. So for years and years and years, I think actually since the beginning of the company, we've had a 10% discount for club members. Club members are now really BOD subscribers. And that 10% made sense for a while because there wasn't a whole lot of extra added value with the club. There were things like meal planners, and you get a little bit more, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense unless you could say yes, but you can save 10% on your supplements. When On Demand launched, that just fundamentally, substantially changed. And now On Demand at $99 per year, and you know, it's a crazy deal. And so what we're doing, what Beachbody is doing is just to take away that 10%. And that's going to start tomorrow. So I want to just touch on this really quickly and give you a couple of thoughts about how to deal with that. Okay. And so I'll give you some of mine, and then I want to get to Ryan too, which is one of the reasons I want to have him come back on. So, well, I think the first thing I'm going to say to anybody who comes to me, I'm talking about existing customers who are like, hey, wait a minute, I want my 10%. What's this all about? It's not fair. The first thing I'm going to do is agree with them and say, you know what? I understand. It's one of the best ways you can ever deal with an objection is to just tell somebody, I understand. Because on some level, sure, I can see where you're coming from. And then to transition to, so you know, this is not me making that change. This is a corporate decision that happens way above my level. So I can sympathize with my customer and relate to them on that level and just explain to them, look, maybe I'm not a fan of it either, but it's really something that's happening way over my head that is outside of my control. So I'm mainly just going to listen and try to empathize with them and then try to get them to understand the history of it, which is why I started with the history of it, which is that we have a fundamentally different animal now that we have On Demand. And now that all this added value is there, that doesn't make sense with the way things work now with our compensation plan. So the 10% really had to go away. They should be aware of this, okay? I'm not anticipating any sort of major revolt from my existing club member customers because Beachbody's been emailing them about this. And I haven't had anybody contact me And this has been going on for a couple of months where they've been sending out these little, hey, by the way, your 10% discount's going away email. I've not had a single person contact me. Ryan, I don't know if you have, but I haven't had anybody contact me.
Nope.
So, not anticipating a major issue. I just wanted to give you a couple of, first of all, make sure you're aware that tomorrow's the day and that things are changing. So take a look at maybe your marketing, maybe some automated emails. I know I have an email that I send out with Shakeology samples. I sent a bunch out last week, and I had to, like, a couple of months ago, take that, and what it talks about the pricing options, right? And one of the pricing options is to get the 10% discount. I had to make sure I take that out, so just think about any sort of marketing materials you might have. If you've got a website set up, take a look at that and just take another browse through it. Make sure that you're not inadvertently offering people an offer that really doesn't exist. Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. I think there's maybe 3 parts to that conversation. The first is you have to validate their concern. You definitely do not get defensive about it. If somebody says, well, that's unfair that they're taking the 10% away, the wrong answer is, it's not unfair. You're getting a ton out of Beachbody On Demand. Don't get defensive like that and be like telling them that they're wrong, that it's unfair. You have to sympathize, empathize with the person and say, I totally understand. Because if you were in the same situation where you were getting a 10% discount for the last couple of years, you weren't a coach, maybe you don't even hardly use BOD. It just came, with your club membership and you were more interested in the 10%, you would also feel like that was unfair. And you would need the explanation, at least, of the logic, right? So the first thing is validate it. You don't have to agree necessarily, but you have to validate that their concern is it's a valid concern, right? I totally get what you're saying. That totally makes sense why you're upset. I'm with you on that. The next step 2, is give a little explanation. You don't have to go too in depth, but give an explanation of corporate's thought process on why the 10% is going away. Here's the other side of the story, right? Here's from corporate side, here's what they're seeing. They're putting that 10%, I think the way I would put it is they're taking that 10% and they're pouring that into more content on Beachbody On Demand. They are just totally filling up On Demand with so much content. And if you're more into nutrition, like with Shakeology, there's nutrition content on there. It's not just workouts, right? So tell them, they're not just like taking the 10% away so we can all make more money. They're taking that money and putting it into more content, more stuff, more value. That's how I would, so first is don't tell them they're wrong, validate their concern. Second is give a little of the other side of the story. And I think the third piece is, I always call it coming to the same side of the table as them, which is like, instead of you being on opposing sides of the table, here's my side, here's your side. You walk around to the other side of the table and you go, okay, how can we find a solution to this, right? Because there are some solutions. One of the solutions is, what if we got a 25% discount on the product instead of a 10% discount? Maybe it's time for you to become a coach, right? But you don't do that right up front. You do that after you have validated the concern, maybe given a tiny bit of the background of why, what they're doing with that 10%. And then come around to the other side of the table with them and go, let's see if we can find a solution to this. That'd be how I would do it.
That's why I had to come back on. Because I agree. Yeah, I agree. It really brings back into play the option to become a coach. Yeah, keep in mind that there's pros and cons of that from your perspective. Okay, from their perspective, it's a big discount. It's $140 for Shakeology plus the $2 for shipping. If they're on Home Direct. Club price was more like 127, 130 in that neighborhood. It's $115 as a coach if you add in the monthly business service fees. If they're military or something like that, they don't pay those monthly business service fees, and their cost is only like $99. So it's a substantial discount for them. From a retail commission perspective, when somebody becomes a coach, you forfeit your retail commission. What you gain, however, is downline team cycle bonus volume. And if that happens on a large enough scale, that's a good thing. You also might gain some people who take a serious look at coaching, which has been really my experience with that discount coach thing. Is you start people that way, but don't forget about them. I think one of the mistakes we make, in particular because of the structure of Success Club, is we're always looking for a new person. And we forget about the people who already said yes. But you got this group of people who already said yes. They're already engaged in the product. You don't need to introduce them to Shakeology. They've got it, and they're enjoying it, and that's great. Don't forget about those people and go back to them periodically and ask them, hey, is this working for you? Are people commenting on your results and your success? Are you interested in learning more about who we are and what we do, and taking that cost of Shakeology and even lowering it? Because what if I could show you how to save another $30 on your Shakeology? And the way you do that is by selling a Shakeology. And then you've got somebody who maybe could mature into a working coach. There are story after story after story of people who got initially involved with this business just for the discount. Mm-hmm. And then they started to look at it and they went, oh, wow, there's something really important here. So that it does open up that door again. But I love the way Ryan, just sort of put that together, validate, explain, and then come around to the other side of the table with them and look for some proactive solutions. And I think if you do that, if you have problems, and again, I haven't had anybody contact me, so I'm not anticipating this going on, but I think it's just important to understand how all that stuff works. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and touch on it. And unless you've got something else, Rhino, I think we can wrap it up.
I think we're good.
All right, man. Thank you again. Thanks, Ryan, for that. That was phenomenal. What a fantastic interview. I've got 1,000 things racing through my head. But we've already been on for almost an hour and 15 minutes, and I want to sort of collect them and maybe come back in a couple days and give you some more thoughts. So there we go. Thanks so much for your time, and have a fantastic day. Whoops.